Hello everyone, welcome to week 11 of Computers in the Studio. Hope you all have been doing well. Please be sure to check out week 10's videos before moving on to this one. In this specific video, we will be going over After Effects effects panel. And so make sure to create a new project if you haven't already, and then from that you can then create a new composition. You can use just the standard default that we've been using for all of our previous lessons, and you can call it After Effects Effects, and then hit OK. So once you have this blank window, let me just quickly talk about what are effects in After Effects. I think probably the best way to describe them is very similar to filters in Photoshop. So how you have blurs and how you have distorts and noise and grain and all of these things that are an option within Photoshop are similarly an option within After Effects. The difference here is that you can actually animate these effects and change these effects over time. So they're not static in the same way that they would be in a Photoshop file. And so the first thing that you're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a new solid, and you can just call that effects solid. The color doesn't matter, and it can be the comp size, okay? And so once you do that, you should just have a composition or solid that takes up the full composition, so a colored solid. And so from this, you can then add effects by going to the effects panel right here, right? And then clicking on any of these. And so for this, we're going to go, for this example, we're going to go to noise, and then we're going to go to turbulent noise. And so what you should see at this point is that in effect has kind of taken over the entirety of the solid. So you need to have a layer of some sort to apply the effect to. The way that effects work is that, as you'll see, once you select one, you then get this thing called effects control. And so you can access the parameters of your effect by either this effects control panel or by going down into your layer and then clicking into the solid, into effects, and then into turbulent noise. I would recommend that you use this effects control panel just because it is separated and it's a little more clean and you're not mixing in too many things into one panel, because this can get kind of messy if you're trying to use your layers panel to edit your effects. So from this, you can then see that there are all of these parameters to then edit. If I want to up the contrast, I can do so. If I want to up the brightness, I can do so. If I want to edit the opacity, and also even editing the blend mode. So similarly to Photoshop, you can actually start to blend different layers together. And so if you'll also see that there's a stopwatch on all of these different parameters, and if you've come to know what stopwatches mean within After Effects, it means that these can all have keyframes added to them, meaning that you can edit them over time. Another really cool thing about the way that After Effects works is that you can stack these different effects. So I'd have a turbulent noise effect, right? And then, for example, let's say I want to add a twirl effect to it, right? You don't see anything right now, but if I go to my angle and then I start to twist, you'll see that over time it's changing, right? And it's affecting the turbulent noise effect below it. After Effects is stacking dependent. So what that means is that depending on which effect is first and which effect is second, they will have completely different outcomes. So right now I have a turbulent noise with a twirl stacked on top of it. But if I were to move this twirl to below the turbulent noise, you'll see that it changes into something completely different, right? Now if I want anything from the twirl to be noticed in this, I have to really add a lot of twists, a lot to the angle in order to actually get something to show up on this page. Along with that, you'll now see that kind of the red is starting to come through from the solid completely underneath it, just because it's twisting the image underneath. So if I were to move it back, you'll see that completely different. So I'm going to change this from 55 back down to 1, so it's only twisting once. And then, for example, I could then stack another, I could stack another one of these turbulent noises. Let me find it really quickly. And you'll see that now it's turbulent noise, twirl, turbulent noise. But from this, I can then start to maybe change some things about it that then allow the twirl to come through. So I can maybe change the opacity, I can maybe add some more contrast to it so that it's really coming through, or I could even, actually go into these blending modes, right? So if I want to maybe add some darken, you'll see that it comes kind of fully through and kind of adds the value, or through exclusion, There are many different ways that you can take these effects and kind of layer them on top of each other. Now, now that we've gone through just like the stacking and the initial kind of layout of how effects work, what I want you all to do is we're going to kind of hide this. I want you all to create a new solid, and it can just be, solid, it can be effects, solid mask, and you can kind of change the color to whatever best suits you all. I'm going to do this like nice pink color. And so as you'll see, there's still this panel called effects control here, right? And I can close out of this, and then now I just have the project panel here. One thing I would recommend that you all do is if you go to your windows, if you go to window along the top, you'll see that there are a lot of different windows that you can add to your workspace. And along the bottom, you'll see that underneath composition, there'll be one called effects control. If you click on that, the effects control panel shows up, and this is generally good practice to just have here, even if you're not adding any effects, simply so that if you want to add effects, you can just do it straight through here, as opposed to having to go up to this top panel to do it. And so from here, you can then just right-click. What you want to do first, actually, is make sure that you have your solid selected, and then you can right-click and add an effect. And so I'm going to re-add some turbulent noise. And what I'm going to show you is that with After Effects, you can also mask effects, which is a pretty recent development. And so you can mask effects, or you can add masks in the same way that you would to a normal solid or layer. I would maybe select this rectangle tool, and then I would drag out a rectangle and a mask. One thing to note that I didn't go over is that if you want to actually even invert the mask, you can do so by clicking this invert check underneath mask 1 in masks underneath the solid, and then you can change the relationship of the element to the mask. So right now this effect, or this mask, is affecting both the effect and the layer and the solid. So if we want it to just affect the effect, what we can do is go into your effects solid mask layer, drop down into effects, drop down into turbulent noise, and you'll see that all the different options are here. And then from here, click on compositing options. You'll see that there's a plus sign, click on it, and ba-bam. Now you have a mask reference on this effect, and it's adding that mask that we made only to this effect. And so then I can then start to refine the mask by going back up to masks, and maybe I can add a mask feather, right? And then from this, you'll see that I now have both the background of my solid and also the effect and its own mask on top of that. I can then drag this around together, or if I click on maybe the mask by itself, I can then also drag this by itself to then edit it. Similarly, I can then invert, so if I want only the mask to show the solid underneath, now all of a sudden you'll see that there's this like nice feathering effect and it kind of looks like it's popping out from underneath it. There are lots and lots of different effects to be used within After Effects. I mean, just right-clicking and looking through all of them are here below. More than I can go over in this lesson, so please view the exercise after this video and then kind of just mess around and learn about some different effects. All right, this is the end of video 1. We went over effects in After Effects. Please join us for video 2, where we will go into null objects and blending modes. Thank you all.